Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to Angel Face Magic Hour. And today we're here with a guest, a very special guest. I'm so excited to introduce you guys, Jasmin Lalani. Jasmin, I met years ago and I worked with her as my coach. And it's just like really cool to have her on here. So much has shifted and changed and grown since I worked with her because I think that was 2019. But I think a lot have shifted and changed and grown for you. So I just want to have you introduce yourself to the audience for those who don't know you, just your name, who you are, a little bit about yourself and where you're located.
Awesome. Okay, so can you hear me okay? Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay. So Jasmine. I am 29. Oh my God, I don't even know if I'm 28 or 29. Holy shit, y'all gotta do the math. It's like 1994 minus 2024, like, because my birthday's April 1st, so I'm an Aries. Let's start with that. I'm a Sun, Aries. What is it? Sag moon and a Libra rising.
Ooh,
How could
I'm
I
Libra
forget?
rising too.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Yeah, I love starting with that because I feel like that gets like people to be like, okay, like I understand here. Like, okay, now I understand. Okay, so that is my sun moon rising. My human design is manifesting generator. I'm getting more into that. Like I'm learning more about that because it's really helping me like with my business and like where I'm going right now. And we'll talk a lot about that. But basically, what I'm at right now in 2024, I am an intuitive business brand and strategy coach. So I help spiritual entrepreneurs get to $5,000 or more in 3 months or less, doing exactly what they're doing. So I like my specific thing that I love to do is like I love to get into their world and know exactly like where they're at because I've been in the same place and all these women I've already talked to where it's like they have all of these offerings and all of this stuff, but they don't know like it's like not making consistent income, like the the content's not converting to sales, like all the things that I had issues with because I used to do retreats too. And I love retreats. Like hosting retreats is like one of my favorite things to do. But it burnt me out because like it wasn't taking in the money that I was like expecting it to. Like it was bringing in big dollars, like high ticket, but I wasn't
You have to
actually
put so
like
much into it too, like
right. And
money
what
wise.
I'm learning is like getting my women, the women that I'm calling in, getting them in an organic product suite to get them to be like, oh my God, yes, I have to do this retreat. Versus me, I was like praying and manifesting, like, oh my gosh, like, and then it ends up selling, great. But that's like manic manifesting. And that was like where I was at with when I even met you, like when I was doing all these offerings, coaching, card reading, all these things, like it wasn't bringing the number that I was desiring. And I was all about like manifestation and all this stuff too. But the thing that I was missing was my masculine structures. So basically, like I've gone through this whole rebranding and I'm helping women do the same because I've been there, for this past 12 years, which all lead to my spiritual awakening, which started, I want to say 12 years. Yeah, 2012. We're in 2024. It really
That's
started,
so
I want to
crazy to think about.
right?
2012 doesn't seem that
Like
long ago.
it doesn't. And it's like 12 years, like holy shit, that's been a decade and then some change. But yeah, so it's been 12 years and I feel like that's when I started to feel the vibes. I started to feel like, you know, whatever I'm doing, what was I doing? I was like being a kindergarten aide and I had like a cocktail waitressing job and I always worked like work, 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 work. And then I did shrooms one time and I swear to God, y'all, like I don't recommend like everyone to do it. It's just your own calling, but I'm telling you, like it literally sparked my freaking spiritual awakening. And I'll tell you too, like it was a fear for me to do those types of things because my childhood background is I have a father who is on meth, like still to this day. So like hardcore, like fucked up drugs, like fuck your soul up drugs. Like actually is like a traumatic thing to my childhood and to me as like who I am today and like what I'm healing from. So it was like kind of an iffy thing for me to do, but I was just like, it was a beautiful setting. It was me and my husband who we were dating at the time. And we ended up doing shrooms and then it was just like everything opened up for me because I started to see, like physically see how everything in the world had a vibration. Like it may not have a consciousness, like us humans have a brain and we can function and we can manifest certain things, but everything has a vibration. And that like reflected back onto me, like, holy shit, like there's a whole other world, invisible world that I am just learning about. So I feel like my soul opened up like right when I did shrooms. And then like what really catapulted me like into spiritual awakening, that's when I was just like, oh, vibes, vibes, energy, energy.
Yeah,
But
you're like,
really
this is
like,
cool.
yeah, like it's cool, it's fun. But when I actually started to take this, like my personal journey got really deep was when I got pregnant with my son, who he's 8 now. So that was 9 years ago. I
And
I
you
got
now
pregnant with
have three
him.
children too.
Yeah, I have two under two. I just gave birth 7 months ago. So yeah, and I honestly feel like the best ever. Like within 7 months postpartum, you know, you're supposed to be like healing and like getting your groove back, but I'm on fire. And you know, again, it's the spiritual awakening. It's like when you awaken to the things and then you take a line action, you know, like doing the podcast, doing the offerings, putting out the spiritual offerings and all that stuff, like that's going to catapult you into where you're gonna like where you want to go. Like it's just every little thing is just piece by piece, just like how I met you and like where we're at now, you know?
I know, I was
So
thinking about that before we started. I was like, we'll talk about it in a minute. But when you had your first son, did you feel like that consciousness where you're like, this is going to be a boy? Like, could you kind of tune into that? Or what did that feel like for you?
absolutely. So it was crazy because the day that I found out I was pregnant, what was it? I told my husband or my boyfriend at the time, baby daddy, and that night I had a dream that I saw a baby boy like walking. And then that's when I was like, I swear to you, that's when I was like, holy shit, like I'm like this spiritual being, like the third eye has awakened. Like that, you know, 2012, I learned about third eye and like third eye chakras and all that stuff. Like it was all just woo woo. And then 2014 is when it all like came together, like higher self, how like the dimensions and the vibrations and the oscillations, like that's when everything was just like thrown into from my higher self down to like my physical like consciousness, like what I was able to perceive at the time. So that was that moment when the whole spiritual seed was like, I say, was like injected into me. It was like when I found out I was pregnant, I got those visions, and lo and behold, I had a boy. And then when we went to do the, what's it called, the ultrasound, I was like, I already know. Like, you don't have to tell me. Like, I'm going here just so I know, like, just so my husband knows that it's not a girl. Like, I already have just like this gut feeling. And when I was able to tune into that, I was like, holy shit, I know everything and anything I need, any moment of the time I need to, like, in any phase of life. That was like my breakthrough moment. And like that's what I love about motherhood, is because it gives me more and more breakthroughs of like, holy shit, like I'm fucking the shit. Like I'm mama bear. Like I'm just like all of these things that are just so grand, and it's so part of my energy, and I've been able to now anchor it into my physical. And I feel like that's what my message is like being able to do all of the things that my spiritual awakening was calling me to do, and just like sharing my gifts. You know, it actually like attracted you, it attracted so much more of like my tribe of my woman to like do what I'm doing now, which is what I really love, and that's helping women build their brand online, like spiritualpreneurs.
I love that. Yeah. And I feel like the way that what attracted me to you is just like the way that you display yourself as like, you're yourself, you know, like you're a real person. You're like, you share like good and bad things. And I think a lot of people, at least on the online spiritual space, it's like you have to be this holy, like perfect being. And
But like
what
this
I like about,
aesthetic, you
yeah,
know.
like I wear all white and like a big hat, and like I love my hats, but you know what I mean? And I just feel like you were like this real person. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. But I think honestly, I feel like it's like the soul connection. It's like, oh, I
Yes.
just see like, you know, parts of me that I can relate to that are like very much like you. And like the more, you know, that I got to know you through working with you, I was like, oh yeah, this is like why we're connected. But it was a
Mhm.
big catalyst for me, and that was like, I feel like it's like before times, because it was like before COVID. So I feel like so much changed so rapidly after that, like
Mhm.
externally. But it was interesting because I remember the first day I got a reading with you, just like, I don't know, it was probably, you probably charge like fucking like no money. Like, I'm like, this
It
girl.
was like $11 or
I'm
something.
like, this is ridiculous. But I was like, let me like do this. But I remember it was a day I was leaving. I was working at this spa and I was going to open up my own place. Then all that changed because of COVID. But it was like right before I left and like went on my own. And then I started like sharing more about my spiritual stuff to other people. So it was very like helpful. But I think it's just interesting because I think certain points on our spiritual journey, it leads us to meet our teachers, people that can help us, like people that can show us things about ourselves. So it's not always like a reading per se. It could be a coaching or a class or things like that. But I think it's always aligned. And I remember you were the first person to tell me about like the Octurians and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, opened up a lot of like interesting doorways. But
like
yeah,
soul family, like soul tribe.
yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing is like when you just share and speak, like I honestly I was like shitting my pants to just like think like, oh my God, like I'm gonna share this. I'm gonna sound like a fucking like crazy ass person. But literally by sharing the message, and if you have that like those fears, that's even more confirmation that like you're gonna slingshot your way to like something incredible. Because like, you know, like you said, like I was the first person that you heard talk about Arcturians, and like just me speaking my truth, I literally called in my soul tribe, you know?
Yeah, they were
Like the
like,
soul
oh, these are
alignment.
the guys that I talked to, but I didn't have a name for them. I'm like, okay, now I understand.
Yes,
It's
yes.
like crazy. And I remember too the Saint Germain stuff that opened a lot up for
Yes.
me too, because I'd never heard about that, and I think certain things are just like we need to hear them at certain times.
Right. And
And even
honestly,
doing
like
the
some
podcast is like that. It's like we're just gonna say this here and it will help someone, even if it's just like 1 minute of the conversation.
Yeah, and sometimes we just need to hear it again and again, and spirit will throw us the message again and again until we actually get it, until we actually can get it from someone where we can resonate with, you know, that same energy. Like someone can tell you the same thing, but in a different way, but you translate it in a different way because the way that their energy is. It's just the energy signature, you know? And I feel like that's what is I feel like why I call myself the multidimensional mother is because, like you said, I'm like all the aspects, like the spiritual teacher, mom, spiritual hood shit, like dancer, you know, fun, you know, all fiery, all these things. And I feel like there's so much women out there who are multidimensional too, who have all of these aspects about themselves. They're not just like nerdy and cute, but they're also spicy and like, you know, all of these different things. And like now putting that into a brand, like putting that into their brand, like putting that into their voice to where like they're able to just call in exactly the woman that is like aligned with them, with their energy, you know?
What do you think like is the scariest for people in terms of like starting to put themselves out there online? Like, have you noticed a theme or anything like that? Or
It's
for
always
yourself?
it's always going to be the like a huge limiting belief around like imposter syndrome. Like I was even talking about that today. Like I have that more and more, the more and more I come up, the more and more that I evolve, the more and more you're going to have that imposter syndrome. And so if you're feeling that call to speak your truth, you're going to get those imposter syndromes, or you're going to get the setbacks, you know, like, oh, I'll just wait till tomorrow. Oh, like, no, like if you feel it right now, you have to do it right now. Like follow the calling right now. Like for instance, this is a perfect example. I needed 15 minutes before, and I was in the shower and I was like, oh, do I get another 15 minutes or do I don't? And I was like, no, get those 15 minutes because I have so much that is channeling right now. Don't wait. Don't let it sit in your head. Like at least write it down, you know, have content. And that's like how I'm able now. Like I feel like I'm able to have better and more quality in my content. And it feels good to do it because I'm taking those aligned actions right now. The moment spirit's giving it to me, I'm writing it down or I'm going to voice note it, you know, for my podcast. That's what I love about podcasts is like, you can just do the voice and, you know, just channel and channel and channel. But like, yes, the hardest thing is that imposter syndrome. You're going to even think that you're not qualified to talk about it. Like, get that shit out of your head, like right away. That's like the number one thing that I see with any woman I work with, no matter what part of their journey they're in, like whether even it's bodybuilding or if it's like building, you know, her online business, like, or even someone who just wants to do retreats, you know, they don't understand that that imposter syndrome will just keep you from staying low. So like just keep on coming up, keep on coming up, keep on coming up. Don't let that like stop you, because you are qualified. That's why it's coming through to your body. You know, the higher self is telling you to share this stuff.
Yeah, you
So,
get the ideas for a reason, like, and we don't have to like take action on everything immediately. Like sometimes we get like 10 ideas at once, so it's like
right.
doing what you're doing, like writing it down, taking a voice note, and then you can come back to it. But like I think trying to remember those things and not just like letting them sit
Like
around.
sit and marinate in your body when it's not
Yeah.
meant to marinate in your body. It's meant to be shared, and like that's medicine, you know, instead of it being like sitting in your body, like you need to share that, because that's going to bring, you know, those soul clients. Exactly what you are, the higher self is telling you. Don't even try to like word it any differently. Exactly how it says, like through the third eye or the higher self, however you feel like you channel, whether it's like writing down. Some people are good at writing it down, like exactly word for word is so important.
Do you feel like it's easy for you to bring it through just words? I feel like you're very like clairaudient, kind of. That's how I
Yes,
perceive it.
absolutely. And that's what was the hardest thing for me with doing this rebranding, and like being able to call in now the women that I want to call in, and like even have women who want to work with me before I even have offerings, you know, like now I can create offerings based on what women want, because what was the question again? Well, I want to say because I got clear on my messaging, but it's connected to what was your question? What was the
Oh, I
question?
just mean like the way that things come through for your channel, like
Oh, okay, yes, the clear
which is the
audience.
answer to that question. It's like you're
It's like
listening to a lot at once, so you have to like make it clear.
yes, and so that's like the hardest part for me as a clairaudient person is like I said, I just need to write it down, and like taking those aligned actions to just write it down and like get it on paper is like so important for me, because like how I do, like I do channel, you know, and then like I'm the type where it just flows through the voice. And so I need to write it down, because writing it down, like that's how your soul clients are going to like come to you. Like that's how your message is going to come across. Yes, your podcast, but you obviously need to get people to the podcast first, you know, and like how do you funnel people to your podcast? Obviously your wording, but it's not even your wording. I want to like, it just got so clear to me, even just today. Like I was telling my husband, it's not even just a messaging, it's your voice. Like when you
Yes.
can get clear on your voice, and not even clear, just be able to translate your voice onto social media, that's the key. Like that's the sauce. Is just being able to translate exactly what you're saying, who you're saying it right now, just right there. Like you can do the videos and you can do the things, but like your messaging is what's gonna like get people to like want to get into your world even more. Not necessarily like get into your world, but want to pay you to do whatever you're doing. They're gonna see you as like the it girl, you know? That makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think the component that is interesting to me when I'm reading something, it's like the energy of it, the voice, like you feel, even though
Yes, the
it's you're
voice.
reading it, you can feel like I can imagine it, that person saying it, like I can feel what they mean by it. And I feel
Right.
like if you don't have those things align with the way you're displaying yourself, whether that's pictures or videos or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
people could read it, but they might not get it because they don't get you. So I think it's like bringing those things together, like, because I think a lot of people are shy for video.
Yeah,
Like they don't want
absolutely.
to like be seen and they'll just write. But I think we need like both, like, or just audio, but like being able to hear the sound, like, because for you, your voice is like captivating, you know. So that's why I was very excited that you started a podcast. So yeah, Jasmine
Yay.
just started a podcast pretty recently. What is it called? And we'll
It is
put
called,
links to all your stuff in the show notes.
yes, it is called Embody Your Evolution Podcast, and it is on Apple.
What made you decide that you wanted to finally start a podcast? Because you've done YouTube videos, you have a pretty big Instagram, like, you know, you're already doing
Um,
those things, but why were you like, let me do podcasts?
well, I think you like hit it on the nail where you're like, I'm a clairaudient kind of person. Like the way I channel is like through my voice. And I feel like if I can just hit click and just be able to open up, then that's when so much stuff flows. And I feel like that's when women can really like get into your world and really understand who you are, because there's no cut and paste, there's no back delete, you know, and like, oh, what do I use for this? It's literally just comes through. It's just pure channel. That's how I see it. And whether it's like video or posts or podcasts, the most important thing is sharing your story. And if you just share your story, then everything just goes into alignment. Like just sharing your experience, everything, everyone, no matter what you're saying, everything will just flow. And so that's what I also love about podcasts too, is like I'm able to share my story because I have such a long story. You know, like it's been 12 years from that spiritual awakening, but you've seen my journey. Like I feel like I've lived like 10 different lifetimes, you know? Like I've done bodybuilding, modeling, like dancing and like music video stuff, and then now like mom stuff and now business stuff. Is like all of it now is coming in full circle. I'm realizing it. Um, but it's just so crazy because when you have such a big story, like a long story, and you have so much to share, and if you're a clairaudient like us, podcast is totally the way to go, I feel.
I think so too. And like, I feel like, again, yeah, it's the energy. It's like, so the people that I like to listen to, it's like, I don't even really, it doesn't matter what they're talking about. Like, obviously I can find conversations interesting, but it's like the vibe, the feeling, like that person makes me feel good. So that's why I come back to them. And like, I might get some insight or information, but I could also just like do my dishes and like zone out. Like, but I'm just like tuning into the feeling of that energy. But yeah, it's quite interesting. I feel like for you, yeah, I've seen you go through this like full circle of when I first met you, you were doing like the card readings, you were doing a lot of like energy healing stuff, but you were doing like bodybuilding, and now I see now you're coming back to more of the physical stuff. So it's really cool to see, because I feel like certain times we have to pull back. One, you had you already had your first kid, but you had 2 fucking kids like in a really short time. You moved across the country, like so many like big life changes. Yes. But I think in terms of like the spiritual journey, sometimes we have to pull back and come back to like the body, come back to like the origin point of like how we can connect. And I think like, yeah, any kind of physical stuff, breath work, like those things where it's less about, oh, I'm channeling, I'm doing this, I'm getting all this information. Like sometimes we gotta just come back to like center,
the balance.
Feel like even more channeled information comes forward because you're like allowed to have it come through because it's not as overwhelming.
And honestly, that's why I feel like I left the spiritual community. I feel like I extracted myself from it. I like really was so dived in when we met, you know, 2020. That's when so much was downloading and I was sharing so much of information. I even did like 2 lives of like 4 hours on YouTube of like dissecting the disclosure map. There was like this crazy map, and I was just channeling, and like it's like, bro, like you obviously know it's not a script. Like I don't know all this shit. It's just channel, you know, like I was just speaking.
I remember your video you put out that was about like the moon, because at the time there's all this controversy. Everyone was like the moon is evil.
Yeah.
I was happy to see you talk about it because you were like, this is like where like, you know, our indigenous like connections and stuff were. Yeah, there was like so much drama. I'm like, there's already so much going on. Like, why are we hating on the moon of all things?
Right. And I feel like what I started to see in the spiritual community, like obviously myself, my energy was diving into that unhealthy, toxic spiritual
it can get
stuff.
Scary and like unnecessary to go that deep.
There's like a fine line between like fucking crazy and then like just being woo-woo, you know? But that's why it's so important to like be grounded and like have that masculine balance, you know, the feminine balance. Like for me, I was so in my feminine, so about channeling. And I just got lost in my own sauce. Like I feel like right after I did those 4 hours and I was just channeling, and then I did crypto, and then like instantly make like $1,000 from my one offering ever. And like that was huge to me, you know? And so like random things like that popped off to where it was getting me off track of like the true mission, like the soul mission work. Like all the money that I talk about, all the money making, all this money being like Millie making mama, all this stuff, it's because of the soul mission work. It's so I can be like so chill and so, you know, relaxed to where I can now do what I'm meant to do. Like honestly, babe, like helping women is so part of my mission, but I know my soul is meant to do like fucking hardcore radical shit. And like what I mean by that is like the division I feel like I'm meant to be in is saving children in this like trafficking shit. Like trafficking is not gonna be an issue for as long as I live. Like that's like my soul mission work, you know? So this is all part of it. Like that's why it's all coming in full circle because when we met, I was all about like financial awakening, you know, financial freedom, 5D, new earth. But now it's all coming back full circle. It's all in alignment because we need to have these strong systems in place doing what we love, making money doing what we love. That way we can keep on progressing, following our mission, following the intuition, taking aligned action, following intuition, taking aligned action. And that's just going to get us to where the soul mission work is. Like for where I'm at in my life and my spiritual awakening, years ago, I want to say like when I first moved here, I was shown like specific exact locations. Like I'm telling you, longitude, latitude locations from my higher self showing me this is exactly where trafficking, human trafficking, and all this stuff is. And at that point in my life, I was like, radical, yes, I'm for it. I'm going to save children. But there was no place, like there was no kind of timeline that was laid out for me to do that. And that's one thing about the spiritual community is like they're very radical, but they haven't done like they haven't created a plan. And sometimes it's not even about creating a plan. Sometimes it's just that it's not laid out yet. So a lot of times we can see very far future and we can speak about it and share it, which I never did. I didn't really share about like saving children and stuff. Like I started to really tap into real like my soul purpose a couple years ago, but now that it's coming full circle, I can see how my soul mission is now in my timeline. Does that make sense? Like
I think
before back
sometimes too,
then,
like things come up and it's like just in fear mongering into a point of fear where there's no action behind it. There's no, it's just like, this is a horrible thing that we should all be upset about, obviously. But then
yeah.
we just get upset about, we don't actually do anything. So I think sometimes, yeah, when things are so ahead in the future, it's like you might see, oh, there's going to be an earthquake or something. It's like, what can you do in that moment when you get those prophetic
I was
things?
getting very prophetic things like that too about COVID. And that's why I moved from California to Montana literally like weeks before. And I want to say in November, I specifically talked about how my higher self is preparing me for a move because there's going to be a drastic, huge collective shift to where my energy needs to be completely away from where I was. And so I followed that calling. And like, holy shit, like, you know, that quantum leap me to there where I was. But then I was to a point where I was just channeling. I was just getting lost in my own sauce that I got like loss of the real intention. You know, like when I saw those longitude latitudes of like trafficking and like those underground tunnels and stuff, I got scared because my higher self was, you know, dripping to me knowledge that I was ready. But the fact that I got scared, I shut it off. So then 2 years go by and I have my babies, you know, and then I want to say right at that 3 months, right after I gave birth to my last baby. So 3 months postpartum, which is 4 months ago. That's when like the higher self just opened back up again and showed me, like laid out a map for me of how this, now how my soul purpose is now in alignment with my timeline. You know, now that I'm getting my foundations in place, now that like money is no longer an issue, you know, creating that kind of reality, that's that's anchoring that 5D earth, you know, to where the first layer to me in my spiritual awakening of 5D earth is making money not a problem, making money work for me. You know, I was just all about like all of these offerings, but how can I do all of these offerings to where I'm going to do what I love and I'm going to make money no matter what? I don't have to worry about, oh, I need to have 7 people, or I need to do this, I need to have that, all these numbers. Like, I don't want to worry about it. So like that's where I'm in right now, like doing the whole branding, helping women do this brand, because honestly, like it's really aligned my soul to show me like this is what I need to do, because this is what's going to set my foundations, my where money's not a problem, to where now I can actually expand on a soul level, like, and there's so much of my teaching, but there's still so much ahead of me. You know what I mean? So
I
yeah,
mean, you're so young. It's like you have a long time you have a lot of layers
absolutely.
more
And I
to go.
honestly think that I'm gonna live for 200 years. And I
I
don't
could
know if
see it.
like, no, really like the technology that's gonna come up, how I take care of myself, how I'm so connected to spirit. Like there's people already living to 100. Like I feel like I'm gonna surpass that, because I'm gonna unlock the knowledge and the keys of everything that I need to like literally, like what Saint Germain talks about, being that infinite being where you're unpenetrative, that like that matrix kind of person, like that is like available to us. It's just right now in our time and age, and I know the spiritual community can resonate with this, but like we're just in a time and age where that's not really like, it doesn't sound real, but our spiritual community can understand like, oh, I get it, like I understand, like this limitless being of like,
And I
you
think
know
things are sometimes different than the way we can imagine. Like we're not, it might not be necessarily like our body is looking the way it is now. It's like going to be different. I feel like we
yeah.
become this almost, I see it as like that liquid, almost like this fluid
Yes.
energy. And sometimes too, when I look at like the Akashic records or things like that, it's like, I feel like that's what we go back to, like this kind of liquid. I don't know how to explain it.
And like the liquid to me, when you talk about liquid, because I'm diving back into Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, and like the sex mysteries, and which also like really got me to like really get into that womb and like really understand like there's a lot of fucking womb healing all of us need to do. Like the minute I even saw that, like, in the womb and doing some work for Mother Mary on the, what was it? I want to say it was the Oris, the Magdalene Mysteries. No, manuscripts.
Mm,
The
mm.
Magdalene manuscripts. So somewhere in there it was talking about womb healing, and I instantly like started crying, just crying, and I knew like, oh my God, my soul needs womb healing. And so once I started to actually consciously work on my womb, that's when like the money started to flow. Like we didn't even talk about, but like I have Airbnb. I have Airbnb like business. I have Turo too, which go hand in hand. But like that's like my 3D business. Like my 5D business is all this stuff. But then again, it's like I've created a brand to where that's now come together. Like I can do things to where I have my Airbnb and now my social media working together, or getting people from my social media to come to my Airbnb and do social media work, just all of these different things that now that I'm like clear on my brand, like all the things of me is now coming together and I can make money all together. It's like,
Yeah, and I think it goes with the multidimensionality, like that you're
yes,
using that name, like because it's like you don't have to, yeah, limit yourself to this is my only thing. Like I can do all of these things, but in a way that isn't overwhelming, isn't like, oh, I have this business and this business, I have 17 businesses. Like it's just one thing. They just are
yes,
like different aspects of it, which I
that's the
think makes it
key,
easier.
especially for us women. Like, you know, us women now coming into business, it's a whole other collective consciousness shift, because women now, like in business, we've known business to be masculine. And now I'm like teaching women how to do business in a feminine way. Like that's like unheard of. And so like that's where I feel like where I want to help too, like help women, especially spiritual women, understand you can manifest so much from the body. Like do womb healing work and get clear on exactly what you're manifesting and watch that come to fruition. But again, like of course align action, but it's just the intuition will just be a lot stronger, and the energy around you will become much more potent, because you're able to now I like to say like manipulate your energy, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like move and shift things.
Yes.
And yeah,
Like
it's
cloak it,
interesting.
turn it on, up, down, all that stuff.
Yeah, and then I think there's so many different ways that we might perceive the energy centers in the body, but like in Reiki, I'm sure you know this because I know you practice Reiki, but a lot of people will say that yeah, the women typically are like our center, our highest center is like the sacral rather than the root. So it's like easier for us to manifest or bring things forward through that sacral energy. And then of course it's like literal, like giving birth,
Yeah,
but
very.
we do it through our energy as well. So that makes sense to me that you are
I mean,
almost like drawing stuff to you.
and that like should give women perception alone that like if we were like designed to birth like actual people and beings and like flesh and bone, it's like of course we can birth and manifest anything else, like whether it's money or a life or anything, because that's all energy, but you can literally birth flesh and bone, so why not
You're like
manifest
creating a
energy?
brain inside of yourself. Like that's fucking
Yeah,
insane.
I know, it's
Like,
so
so why
wild.
not?
So
I
why
think
not
there's so
feel that
much
power?
fear with money, like within the spiritual, like what community, like people
Yeah.
who are like, oh, I want to start, even for myself, it's like I've had to go through so many layers of that. Like, I want to start or I am a medium, I want to do this or that. It's like that people feel like there is that's bad to make money from that. What is like your
Well,
kind
that
of
is like
biggest
perfect.
tip for people
That's
who are feeling like that? Sorry to interrupt.
no, I'm sorry, I interrupted,
No,
but
it's fine.
that's perfect because that is like okay, that right there is identifying the limiting belief, you know? So you've identified, can you repeat that again?
It's, I think within the spiritual community, like people wanting to begin to make money off of their spiritual offerings, there's a lot of
Oh, that
fear
it's bad,
that it's
right? Like the
bad to make or
taboo.
to bad to charge or that you don't deserve to charge or you should just give it away. Like,
Right.
how do we break through from that?
Okay, so first, like you're obviously that is identifying the limiting belief. What I mean by that is like seeing like that's what's stopping you. That's what's limiting you is someone else's opinion.
Yeah.
Someone who hasn't even paid you yet. And the only reason why I'm talking slow like that is because like that's how I'm able to be like, hello, duh, like for myself, because it's like when you're able to clearly identify what is that limiting belief. And you named a ton, and each
Yeah, that's
one
like
has,
10.
yeah. And so each one has an exact objection that needs to be literally like felt in the body to where now whatever money story you told yourself, that's transmuted. And however way, because I know there's intuitive healers on this channel who are going to be listening to this, they have their ways of how they release and how they, bring in energy and all that stuff. Whatever is your way, it's just knowing that is a limiting belief. That you have limiting beliefs. That's obviously why you're not where you're at. So getting clear, journaling down exactly what those limiting beliefs are, and then you have to rewire your brain to think the exact opposite. So it's just like getting exactly specific on the problem and completely creating a whole other reality. And that's going to be the first start into rewiring the brain, because it's rewiring the brain first before we can actually manifest it into fruition. And in order for us to even start manifesting, it's like how I see it now, like the whole manipulating of energy, where it's up or down, turning your energy on, off, cloaking it, all that stuff. You first have to see your energy as like you have to turn it on, get it swirling first, because we're in a time and age where a lot of times we're not in our body. So that's why a lot of times when we're meditating, when we say, oh, get grounded, get into the center, because you need to get into the body first and foremost. And once you're able to get
We
into the
glitched
body,
for a second. The energy is too strong. You just
can you hear
started
me?
like going like this and then it started glitching. So for those who missed what we were saying, you were saying you got to be able to begin to move your energy and feel it first.
Right. Yeah. So like seeing and feeling that invisible energy begin to like come and swirl, but it first begins with implanting like the right like realities, the right stories that you're in your brain, because we're always manifesting. That was like my second episode or my first episode of my podcast, is that we're always manifesting. So being aware and getting in the body first and foremost. Like I said in meditations, we always say first get grounded, get in the body, because that's when you can start to manipulate your energy, meaning AKA manifest whatever it is that you want. But like the point that I'm saying is rewiring the stories first, because we're always manifesting. So you're right now, we're manifesting the same money stories that we're thinking. Even though we're not consciously thinking it, it's stored subconsciously. So it's our responsibility to write it out, or whatever version, like some people like to do hypnosis. If you have like a
Yeah.
hypnosis, whatever modality you use, like that's just the principle of the money manifesting, like the first principles.
Yeah, and I think it's like identifying how we even got there too. Like I think obviously people know we can pick up things from our parents, but and society. And I think those things run so deep too
Write that
with like,
down. Write
yeah,
that down, because you need to rewrite all of that, like all of the childhood trauma around the money stories. It's important, like, and our responsibility to now, we journaled it out, the trauma, but now we have to rewrite the story. That's like the most important part, is like, yes, we've gotten clear on the problem, but now we have to rewrite the solution, because again, we're manifesting all the time. So we can write it down, but yeah, it's out of the body, but we're not manifesting any differently because we haven't rewired, we haven't rewrote the new stories yet that our brain needs to be operating on. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I think it's like sometimes there's even subconscious blocks, like you were saying, like you're like, oh, I really want to get clients, but there's still fears there for whatever reason. So like you might be like putting yourself out there doing all the things, but you're not branding yourself the way that is authentic. So maybe you might not get the things, but there's like all these layers of like, how do we unwind that? So I think like what you're
Right.
saying is a great place to start, is just identifying like some of the strongest ones, the ones that feel the most intense, and like going from there, because
Yeah.
there's going to be layers.
Definitely identifying money stories is going to help right away, even if you haven't even started your spiritual business or any online business, any kind of business. Like, it's so important to get clear on the money stories, because no matter what industry, no matter what offering you put out or even work towards, it's never going to produce unless you rewrite what you clearly want. And it's not like, oh, I want to make 5D money. It's like, no, I get clear. Like, I want to make $100,000 in 6 months. I don't need to know how, but I'm getting specifically clear. And now the universe is going to manifest that, is going to provide that for me. And I, as a feminine being, being a powerful being, because I'm feminine, I'm going to sit back and relax and ease, and let the universe manifest and provide that for me. But this is what I always tell everyone, is like, you have to take the aligned action every day.
Yeah, it's
And
like
so
bringing the opportunities to you, but you can't just like be like, okay, like you have to do something about it.
you do have to do something about it, but then you also have to, it's that balance of aligned action, but sitting back and relax and ease, and like, okay, I'm relaxing my nervous system. Now I can manifest that life of ease, the life that, where I'm not in a panic with money. Like, how can we manifest a life of ease when our nervous system is still like shot, or like, we need to like drink coffee in order for us to operate. Like, the nervous system is so important. That's why I say like your health is so important, because regulating the nervous system is only going to get you more clear on your channelings and really where you're supposed to go in that 5D timeline. If you want to like leave the 3D timeline and get to that 5D timeline, like really take care of the nervous system, you know?
Yeah, and it's really I think for a lot of people they experience anxiety, so it's like you're in that constant state of fear and panic even if you don't realize it because you're used to it. So it's
Yeah.
like how can we slow down more and more so that you can actually start to feel yourself and feel your body. And I think spiritual practice can be helpful for that, but I think more importantly it's like what you're saying, getting into the body, doing something physical like yoga
And one
or
thing
working
too,
out
I'll
or going
say
outside.
that is just coming through so strong is for especially for spiritual people because we're so empathic is we need to stop absorbing so much content and start creating content. Because again, as empaths, like when we create, that's when we can actually feel good. Like you feel more better. I know you feel this way. You feel so good after you put out your creation instead of like, okay, I'm going to do my podcast now. Okay, I'm going to do my reel now. Okay, I'm going to do this now. Like instead of absorbing, like utilizing social media to like be the creative flow, like whatever it is, whether it's channeling like how we're doing, or if you're a painter, all these things is like, now let's stop absorbing and now start creating because that's what's going to help us get more clear on everything and anything.
Yes. Yeah, I did a podcast episode a few weeks ago at the beginning of the year, and that was the big theme for the year. So come back, guys, listen to that if you haven't already, but that's the big theme is like getting into your creativity. It's absolutely vital right now. And a lot of
Vital.
people don't think that they are artists or creatives. Like it doesn't, you can be a painter or you could be just you don't have to have like a art to create.
Yeah.
But I think playing
Your
around too,
story is your art,
yeah,
you
like just
know?
sharing your voice, sharing yourself, sharing the things you're passionate about. And I think, yeah, showing up as you. And that's why I vibe with you because you don't like put on a persona. And I see that even if people don't realize they're doing it, they do it because they're like scared or like you have to be professional.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that now, like, yeah, thinking about like 5D, the future that we want, like going into that, it's like people actually being not scared to like
Step up
display
and like
themselves in
live
a
your
way that's
life.
unprofessional. Because I don't
Right.
think that's important anymore. Like, I don't think we have to be like refined, like with a blazer, like to be like a business person, you know what I mean?
Right, absolutely. And that's why it's like so like important to just flow, like do whatever it is that makes you feel good, because that's going to be your creative art, you know? And like sharing that, like getting, I feel like where to start for people is journaling
Yes.
down like what makes you feel good, like what do you love to do? And that should help you, get to what your offerings could be or like what is going to be the next step onto your journey, as like spiritually evolving and, going through this life with career or like motherhood and all of those things.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people who listen to this show are like also like healers and things like that. And I think people again like want to define themselves within this box. So I would just try to step away from that and not be like, oh, this is how I have to do it. It's just like trying different things and seeing what feels best for you. Like when it feels good, that's gonna give you the
The
life. So
confirmation.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like what you're saying. Like we don't have to like just show up. It's like showing up aligned, like when we feel the call, when we feel the things. And I think social media, that can be hard because we're like told we have to, oh, you have to post 5 times a day and you have to do this. And there's all these
Yeah.
rules to
Yeah.
like get into the algorithm. And I think it's more important for people to not worry about like view. I don't get like enough views on my page at all, but like
Okay,
I
that's
just keep
another limiting
showing.
belief. That's another limiting
Yeah,
belief is like,
yeah. Like I don't mind because I know people still find me. But I
yes.
think it's like the projection of yeah, it is a limiting belief. Like it has to be a certain amount of followers or
So
views for it to be
I feel
like
like at
important.
that point, when it's like when a limiting belief like that, because even me, like if you look at my profile and you look at my reels, like I don't get thousands of views. I'm still learning how to make reels. I'm still learning, as I go. But now what's different from when I was posting and where I'm at now, and why I don't care about that, is because I've gotten so clear on exactly who I'm calling in. And what
Yes.
I mean by that is like I haven't even put out an offering yet. And women already want to work with me because I've just put out that, like, okay, I'm doing stuff now. Like now I'm coaching, like work with me. Like if you want to work with me, DM me, all those things. Is like, you don't have to worry about likes and views or even followers when you are producing the content that is speaking directly to the women you're calling in. And like for the hardest time for me, it was like, I wasn't clear on the woman I'm calling in. It's like, well, there's all these different types of women that are following me. It's like, don't worry about that. It's like, get clear on what you want. Who do you want to serve? The moment that you get extremely clear on who you want to serve, those women are going to come in because you're going to talk directly to them in your voice, not just talking directly to them, getting into their mind, but because your energy, being you, doing also that money work, the manifestation work. That way we can receive everything in a feminine way. It's that. Like, sometimes I just like
Yeah.
forget.
I
But
think
whatever I said, that.
no, I agree. I think like we can get I think people can get tripped up too on like, oh, who am I talking to? Who am I talking to? And like creating this avatar client. And it's like, I think all that stuff is overwhelming. It's just coming back to what you're saying. Like, who do you vibe with? How can you help people? And
That's
not
it.
like getting stuck on, oh, I could help anyone. Because yeah, anyone could get a reading with me and like they would probably benefit. But there are certain people that would probably benefit more because they can like connect with me and I can talk to them in a way that they can understand.
Right. And what I mean, because you're a coach too, you do all these things too. Like, one thing for me, what I mean for specifically, like the woman I'm calling in is the woman that I want to work with, like close proximity. Like, you obviously don't want to have 30 one-on-one clients. Like, you want to
Yeah.
have the one-on-one client where she's just a couple steps behind you. She's just as fiery as you. She's just as a go-getter as you. All the things that you love about you want to find like the woman you're calling in is going to be like a couple steps behind that, like behind you, but you're just going to already know the energy, like, oh, like she's so like me, but I can help her because I'm a couple steps ahead. And that's where the imposter syndrome was for me for so long. Like, even all these followers and all of my accolades and all these things, it's like I could have been making so much money in the past if I would have just done that, if I would have just gotten clear on specifically who I'm calling in. Because again, I can help a
But
ton of
here we
people.
are now, though. This is the time that's supposed to happen. So you
Wait,
weren't ready
what?
yet. This is the time it's supposed to happen now, though. You weren't ready yet.
Yeah,
So it's
that's
like we
right.
can look at our shit and be like, oh, I could have done this and that. But now you're doing it. So that's all that matters. But it is like frustrating because I think sometimes we can see, yeah, the path that we could have taken, but you're here now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we have a few minutes before we close out. I'd love to talk a little bit about in your motherhood. Like, I know that you do homeschooling as well. So it's like that's a whole nother freaking layer on top of trying to run a business.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you live in Montana. Are you far out from like downtown and like things like that?
So I'm in my apartment right now. I have 5 acres on the south of Flathead Lake, and that's in Polson, Montana. And that's where like home base is. But wintertime, my son, he does competitive soccer. So we have an apartment down here. That way we don't have to go back and forth, with
Yeah, because
all
of
the
the snow.
snow. It's like negative, like double digits. It gets like that out here. So the roads are not good. I mean, it gets dark at like 4 o'clock out here. So, with motherhood and homeschooling, like, how do I do that? I honestly, like, I have my help with my husband. Like, my husband is such a strong foundation, especially when I'm working, and then I have two under two. And then, like, for anyone who does any kind of content work, you have to be in your vortex. The minute like a baby cries, I'm out of my vortex. It's like, okay, get back in the juice, get back in the juice, get back into the content, you know? And it's like every time that I have like the vortex off, it's just like I get it, gotta get it back on. But my husband, he's there to help me with the two under two. And also with my son is like I don't have it where it's like, oh, Monday through Friday, 10 to 4, 10 to 3. It's like whatever he likes, whatever he enjoys, we're gonna go off that and we're gonna like have him keep on like growing from there. Like because I'm all about business. I feel like for the longest time I've always been about business because I've always put out my spiritual offerings. Like I've always been business savvy in a spiritual way for such a long time. And now like being a mom and like homeschooling, I'm like applying that business mindset into my son, which is super cool because he wanted to do like a claw machine and it was like $3,000. And he's like, "Oh, mom, can I get this?" And I was like, "Bruh, like it's $3,000." So then I go, "No, this is absolutely great. Like this would be a great business." Like, you know, like sharing with him, you know, how he could have his own claw machine because he watched like on a YouTube short, some guy made like all this cash from a claw
Oh,
machine.
like you have it up at a shop or something?
Right. Yeah, he owns a claw machine and then he goes and puts it like at Walmart or like Target, you know, the grocery store. And so it was $3,000 and he was just like all about it because he's like a video gamer. So then I was like, ooh, my entrepreneurial mom self was just like, okay, well, let's turn this into a homeschool project, you know, and let's get you a fundraiser. So we set like a GoFundMe. And right now we're at $800. We have $800 left, but
Oh,
within,
that's
I want to say,
awesome.
like in a month and a couple days, he's raised like 3,000 and something dollars because his goal was like 3,800. And so the moment, and he's documenting his whole journey, he has like a YouTube creator thing. And
Oh,
that's
that's
another
cool.
thing that we're doing is he's doing like a 30-day challenge for homeschool. There's like a content creator who did like a free challenge, so we signed up. But you know, like that's just getting him fired up for school and like learning and like growing in the direction that he wants to go. Like, do you see like the common theme here that I'm trying to like push out is just like whatever it is that you love doing, like keep on at it. Like I'm like gonna show my followers like my 8-year-old is gonna build a fucking empire. Like he's gonna be the next not the next, but like you know, like a Ryan's tour review, like all these kids who like are content creators, that's what my son wants. So it's like, why not like help him get there? So
Yeah,
that's
and I
our
think
little
you can
homeschool
learn so
project.
much through that. It doesn't have to be like there's math, there's
Absolutely.
economic, like there's so many different subjects within that. So it's like he's learning a lot through,
Yeah.
and it's like something you're excited about. So I think that is really cool to be able to show him things like that.
Yeah, and he just loves it. Like he thinks it's so cool that like he has now I'm showing him like I'm showing my 8-year-old like he has the power to like manifest $3,000 from people who care about your story. You know, just sharing who you are, what you're doing because people can relate, you know, and that's what's going to get people to want to work with you or come into your world. And so even like my Airbnb photographer is like, "Oh, how's your son doing on his fundraiser?" I was telling my wife about it. We have a three
Oh,
year
that's so
old. We want to
cool.
do that. And so it's cool. You just share your message and then you inspire people along the way that you don't even realize they're watching. But you're just flowing, like you're just doing life the way you want to do it. Not this little 3D, like, oh, he needs to go to school, he needs to do this, this, and that, you know?
Yeah, and when he gets older, if he like wants to, you can always do something different. But it's like I feel
Yeah.
like when you start in that way and you're creating such a close family and like that is radical healing for you too, like being able to have your
Absolutely.
family in a way that was different from your own childhood. And like I think that is so powerful just to be able to like show people that yeah, you're their mom, but you're also like mentor, a friend, like I think that's important for kids to be able to see like different parts of their parents, because I feel like at least in my experience, like it took not until I got older did I like see my parents as like not just my parents. So I think it's like
Yeah.
being able to share the different
That's how
aspects of
I
you.
felt. And I don't want that for my son. Like I want him to like I always tell my husband when he's in high school and he has all his friends, I want our house to be the house where they all come and hang out, you know, and where I know like they're all safe. They're not like out on the streets, but like they
Yeah.
all want to come and flock to our house, you know, our energy, because it's just like authentic and real and love and like light, you know, the real love and light.
Yes. I love it. Well, anything else you want to share with the audience? We will share your, your Instagram, any other links to connect with you in the show notes if people want to work with you, find out more. We'll put your podcast too. So, any big plans for the podcast? You just started it.
Yeah, no, I feel like that's just gonna be my place of where I channel, you know, and like again, you said it's like, oh, the fancy avatar and the this and that is like, yes, like have like, you know, the marketing strategy and stuff, but what's so important is just sharing your message and again, like getting clear on like specifically the woman you're calling in, because the woman you're calling in is like everything you're doing already is gonna already call her in. So it's just like I'm just sharing my message, sharing everything at the moment it comes out, the moment it flies out my fucking mouth, you know. But I just feel like I'm in a place where I want to help women like make money doing what they're doing, and that's building a brand. And I, being a spiritual entrepreneur, again, like I'm calling in the women who is just a couple steps behind me, you know? And so I feel like that is where I'm catering to, the women I'm catering to right now. This is where I'm at in my life and what feels right to me. Like my soul just feels on fire to help women in that way, not like have a mini offering or, you know, at the time it was retreats and I love retreats. And one day I'm going to do retreats again in the future. But right now, if anyone wants to work with me, it'd be like to help you rebrand as a spiritual entrepreneur and get you making money, however much it is, you know. And yeah, the podcast is the place where you can like view and get into my world without having to like pay me, I guess. And then my Instagram, that's where I have all my content. I'm not like, I may be on a juice roll where I post once a day, but you're never going to see lots of posts on my Instagram. You'll see a lot of Instagram stories because I post like a motherfucker on there, because that's just like where I get my channeling going, and it helps me, my clear audience, work with my words, you know, because again, I'm rebranding. I'm still helping, you know, I'm still my own business. My business is growing. So I'm still learning all of these tools too. And so if you want to like know more about me, and like I share a lot about my story and every different story of my life on my Instagram stories.
And you can,
So
I mean, you can scroll right back. You can see all the different categories.
yeah.
I'm sure. I don't know if you deleted old pics. I just keep
No,
all
I
mine up
really
there
didn't.
forever because I'm like, oh,
I
people can
deleted
see
a
all the different
few,
parts of
but
me.
I kept a lot of the spiritual stuff, a lot of the photos that is like who I am, like the nature, me, and like all that stuff. Indigenous, ancestral, all that jazz.
Yeah,
So
amazing.
it
And right
was so
after
fun
this,
to
you're
walk.
gonna take pics for the brand, right?
Oh yeah, that's right, boo, in 3 minutes. So
Amazing. Well, thank you everyone for listening. You guys can connect with Jasmine, and then we will see you in the next episode. Thank you
yes.
so much.
Thank you. It was so amazing. Thank you, Angel. Angel Grace.
Let's see.